The Shakopee Mdewakanton Sioux are a federally recognized Indian tribe. Tribal members are the direct lineal descendants of the Mdewakanton Dakota people who resided in villages near the banks of the lower Minnesota River. They own more than 2,800 acres of land and operate many thriving, successful businesses, including the Mystic Lake Casino Hotel and the Little Six Casino. Mystic Lake Casino is the Twin Cities' only casino hotel and one of the largest Midwest casinos, and features the finest in Midwest gaming combined with all the amenities of a luxury resort. As the largest employer in the county, they employ more than 4,100 people and are a powerful economic force. Their annual payroll is over $143 million. To the Shakopee Mdewakanton, being a good neighbor is an extension of the cultural tradition of being a good relative. The Dakota people believe that all living beings are relatives and should be treated not only with dignity and respect, but also helped in their day-to-day lives. To honor their ancestors and continue their Dakota traditions, they believe that this is not given to them by others, it is in their roots. It is a strength that exists deep within them. Daniel Edwin Jones is a member of this proud tribe, but definitely does not live up to its high standard of integrity and tradition. In 2008, Fred Susie, lawyer for Brittany Powell's mom and sister, successfully settled a wrongful death civil suit against Jones, where he agreed to pay $2 million to the family of Brittany Powell in installments of one $500,000 payment plus $10,000 per month for 12 months and $20,000 a month for 69 months. Jones has not lived up to his agreement. He has only paid $10,000 a month for a number of months and has refused to pay any large payment as he agreed initially. As an adult member of the Shakopee Mdewakanton, he earns $900,000 yearly. That's $900,000 each and every year. He just bought a big mansion and a Mercedes, but refuses to pay any more money per his legally signed agreement, and is now using the sovereign immunity of his Indian tribe as a cover and a cop-out. Jones' outrageous conduct reopened the wounds of grief for Brittany's family. Jones is rubbing salt in those wounds. He is arrogant, he's flippant, and he's dismissive, and he has never shown any remorse whatsoever. He flaunts his wealth by arranging for a big black limo to pick him up after court hearings. He makes flippant remarks to Brittany's lawyers outside of the courtroom after hearings. His attitude is, ha ha, you can't touch me. I'm a Native American and I don't have to worry about breaching my promises because you can't touch me. I'm protected by sovereign nation status. Today, the Insider Exclusive goes behind the headlines to expose Daniel Edwin Jones and find out how Brittany's family and their lawyer Fred Susie plan to get justice for Brittany, her mom, and her sister. And we are sure that the proud Shakopee Mdewakanton tribe does not condone or approve of Daniel Edwin Jones' conduct, and who does not live up to the great traditions of being a good neighbor and holding that all living beings are relatives and should be treated not only with dignity and respect, but also helped in their day-to-day lives. Hi, I'm Steve Murphy, and this is the Insider Exclusive, live from Anoka, Minnesota at Susie Law. It is my great privilege and pleasure to introduce Fred Susie to the show. Welcome to the show, Fred.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Brittany Powell's case. You handled the civil side of it, a wrongful death suit.
That's correct.
Before you were even brought into it, there was a member of the Shakopee Mdewakanton tribe. His
Correct.
name is Daniel Edwin Jones. Tell us about his criminal case first.
At the beginning of the time period following Brittany's death, there wasn't much interest, frankly, in pursuing criminal charges. once Brittany's family's minister got involved, then suddenly there was much, much more interest. The police department did a very thorough investigation. Mr. Jones was charged with 5 crimes. Murder 3, child endangerment, child neglect, supplying methamphetamine, illegal substance, to a minor, and rape of a person who was not competent, not conscious to give consent.
She was 16, he was 18.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
and he was convicted.
He was convicted on 4 out of the 5 criminal charges: the endangerment, the neglect, the supplying meth to a minor, and child rape.
Mm-hmm. By the way, our staff tried to get a hold of Mr. Jones to appear on the show, and we received no answer whatsoever.
That doesn't surprise me. It doesn't surprise me that Mr. Jones has buried himself and has attempted to avoid public attention.
Now, tell us a little bit about Brittany, please.
Brittany was a beautiful child, growing up with 2 sisters and a very dedicated single mom, who had brought herself up by the bootstraps to raise her 3 daughters. And she unfortunately fell into a methamphetamine culture as a youngster here in Coon Rapids, Minnesota,
right.
And got hooked, and much of the next few years of her life were spent in fighting this addiction,
right.
and her mother doing everything she possibly could, tough love, counselors, programs, whatever could be done to help Brittany recover from her addiction was done.
Mm-hmm. We have a video that the family provided us to kind of summarize her life. Let's go to that right now.
Say hi.
Fred was involved with a civil case, a wrongful death case, and we're going to go to a news clip right now to show him, and he's going to be talking about the case right now. Let's do that.
3 years after Brittany's family buried her, Jones's trial began. The prosecution argued Jones chose to rape Brittany instead of getting her help. A jury convicted Jones of rape and drug charges, but acquitted him of the murder charge.
Jones is scheduled to get out of prison next year. It's part of the reason that Brittany's mother and sister are now suing. This may all have you asking, what could they possibly get out of a man who moved from a rundown trailer to a prison cell at Oak Park Heights?
As an adult member of the Mdewakan Sioux Nation, Jones receives a share of gambling revenues. Attorney Fred Soucy says the defense team has told him even if they win, the tribe will shelter Jones's money.
I cannot imagine the honorable people at the Mdewakan Nation conspiring with Mr. Jones so that he can escape accountability.
While Jones was found not guilty of murder, the burden of proof in a civil case is lower. Soucy believes he'll be able to show Daniel Jones likely caused Brittany Powell's death.
What has Mr. Jones' attitude been toward this whole civil settlement?
Unbelievable. Arrogant, flippant, comic. We left a hearing where a lawyer from my office said to the judge, this must end. You know, the pain to this family must end. And when we got out of the courtroom, he said to me, I should keep my lawyer on a shorter leash. Then he makes a point of having his black limousine pull up in front of everybody outside the courthouse, where he smugly walks out, looks back at us, smiles, gets in this huge limousine, which then pulls him away as he's smiling at us, as if to say, ha, I'm a member of the Shakopee tribe. You can't touch me. I may have agreed to this settlement. I may have agreed to put this to bed for the family, but you can't touch me. That's his attitude.
Yeah. Let me ask you this question, because when you talk about sovereignty, he eventually ended up signing an agreement to pay her $2 million.
To pay her family $2 million,
Right.
That's correct.
Now that his income comes from a sovereign tribe, a source which is considered sovereign, how is it that you were able to bring him into the courts outside the tribal areas and get this agreement, or even had you gone to trial and got a judgment and not be able to enforce it? That's kind of, it's a conundrum, if you will.
It's very confusing, but he was subject to the laws of our state. He committed the crime, so he was subject to the criminal prosecution
Sure.
by the state. But in our civil setting, where we try to right the wrong within our civil justice system with the jury trial, he was subject to the jurisdiction of our state district court because the crime occurred off of the reservation.
So he's subject to the civil aspects of it.
That's correct.
But not the collection enforcement aspect of it.
That's correct. Because of the recognition of this as a sovereign nation, the fact that he gets $1 million a year doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to collect that on behalf of the family, which led us to make an agreement that from the point of the family, from my point of view, was reasonable to the point of being generous with Mr. Jones. If you look at any reasonable measure of this guy's lifetime expected income, it's going to be $40 to $50 million at a minimum. The family agreed because in part of these problems of collection to accept $2 million and to give him time to pay it.
Yeah.
And before the ink was barely dry on the settlement agreement, he breached it.
Yeah, and the federal court system cannot force the tribe to pay, right?
That is correct. Under the laws of our nation, they are recognized as a sovereign nation, which is not subject to our civil laws of collection of a judgment.
We today are very fortunate to have Brittany's mom here,
Yes.
Victoria.
Yes.
And we're going to bring her on so she can tell us about how this has affected her. Victoria, I want to welcome you to the show.
Thank you.
It has been a long, hard road, hasn't it?
Torturous.
Knowing that this guy Jones, who signed an agreement, right, that Fred engineered, refuses to pay the full amount of money. What's your feelings about Jones?
He must live with extreme unhappiness with the type of person he is. On the other hand, all I have to do is close my eyes and think of November 7th, and I see this monster taking advantage of my 16, 10-month, 7-day-old child.
Right.
Refusing her a 911 call. What I know is that one thing came to another, and they went to Jones's trailer where he was staying. They ordered food over the course of the day. They drank. They had Cristal champagne delivered by a driver. They hung out in the trailer. They went to a football party, and Brittany started exhibiting signs of overdosing on methamphetamine.
Which had been given to her by Jones.
Which we found later.
Yes.
He took her back to the trailer and he raped her. And he refused a 911 call. And she died.
When did you first find out about this?
At 12:28 in the morning
And
on November 11th.
How did you find out?
A phone call from a police officer. And then the police officer said, she's non-responsive. And it appears to be drug-related. So I drove from Coon Rapids to wherever it is down there. And then they put us in this anteroom. And all of a sudden the room was full of doctors and police officers. And so they took me in to see her. And she had bruises on her. And I kept asking, and nobody will tell me to this day why she had bruises on her.
Bruises where?
On her neck.
I'm very sorry for your loss. It's almost like yesterday, isn't it?
It's like yesterday every day because this son of a bitch doesn't take accountability.
Fred, you had mentioned earlier it took some time for them to bring criminal charges against him.
It took some time, I think, for the police to treat this
A year.
As seriously as they ultimately did. They did an excellent investigation ultimately.
Yeah.
And I think put together a very persuasive case. As you said, he got away with this young woman's death as far as we're concerned.
Yeah.
He did 5 years in prison, which he could probably do standing on his head, but refuses to be held accountable here on a contract of agreement he made with this grieving family.
Victoria, how has this whole incident changed you? How are you a different person today?
True joy doesn't come anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You try to capture it. There's a day that you might laugh till your belly hurt.
Yeah.
But then you're even stunned that you did it because this is a club that no one wants to be a part of.
Right.
There's not a day that goes by that you don't wonder. She would be 27 this year.
Yeah.
What would her life, I think about her life.
Yes.
I have a 12-year-old granddaughter, and I'm ready to be grandma again. You know, I want a baby to play with.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll never get to see her face in a baby.
Mm-hmm. My heart pours out to you for reasons that we talked about prior to the show. We have with us, fortunately today, one of Brittany's, her counselor, Carrie.
Yes, we do.
And we're going to bring her on the show right now, and I want to thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Thank you so much.
It's my great pleasure to introduce Carrie Schaff. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
I understand that you were Brittany's counselor, right, for many years. Now, I understand that she was dealing, like a lot of kids, with, alcohol or drug addiction, right?
Yep.
How were you able to help her in that direction?
Well, I was there to talk, and whenever she needed something or she was struggling, she knew my door was always open, and that's what she had given me, this Eeyore, and that's why I have it here with me today. She gave it to me, didn't really know why, and then we would talk, and she said, you know what, you have Eeyore because Eeyore's sad, depressed, sometimes has really crappy days, but she knew my door always being open, those kids who were sad, depressed, and having crappy days, that my door was always open, so she said this would remind me that I always had to have my door open for the next Eeyore.
And now you are introduced to a guy by the name of Jones.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to us about him.
Somebody I wish Brittany never would have met. I love and respect all people, but that's a tough one for me. I don't have a lot of love and respect for him.
Now, obviously, you know Fred here, because Fred's represented the family, and he's done a stellar job.
Yes, he has.
But there's a problem. The problem is Jones agreed to pay $2 million to the family, and he hasn't really kept up with his end of the bargain. What do you think should be done to him? Come on.
He needs to be held accountable. And, you know, there are a lot of things that go through my head, but he is a human being. And human beings aren't perfect, but you do have to pay for the choices you make, and there has to be consequences for the choices you make. And he made a choice not to save my Brittany, and she's no longer with me, and she's not here to bless this world. And he has not had consequences, and he needs to pay. He took her from us.
Well, that's what this show is all about. There's a lot more that he needs to be accountable for, but I certainly, and our whole staff, thanks that you came on the show today. Fortunately, we have Brittany's sister here today, Ariel. We're going to bring her on right now. We're very fortunate today to have Ariel Powell, Brittany's sister, with us. What is your opinion of Jones today?
Not good things. I feel like he is selfish. I feel like he is a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he, it's almost like a sociopath to me. He doesn't care about anybody but himself. He doesn't realize that he took my sister's life. He doesn't realize that she was 16 years old, helpless, and she needed somebody.
Right.
And he was supposed to be that person that was supposed to help her because he was with her.
It isn't really the money. That's not the important thing.
No.
It's the issue of he's never apologized, has he? He's never said he's wrong, has he?
No, he hasn't.
He hasn't said, I'm sorry, right? I mean, the money, it kind of hurts. That's the way you kind of hurt people. He didn't have to go to jail for murder or anything, right?
Right.
You know? You must be furious.
I am.
That this guy walks the street.
It's like a slap in the face. He walks around feeling like he's better than, and he's not. To me, he's scum of the earth. You know, just because you have money that, you know, you can't take it with you when you're gone. That's not what it's about for my family. It's about you paying for what you did to my sister, for you holding yourself accountable for once in your life.
Yeah.
And he doesn't feel like he needs to do that.
Well, hopefully with this show, maybe he will have to do that. And I want to thank you very much for coming here today. And our heart goes out to you. Fred, this is a case that cries out for justice. And this is one of the reasons why we came here today to Minnesota, to let the world know exactly what's going on. That a person who has to be held accountable, especially in our courts, right?
Yeah. I mean, income of about $1 million a year, having committed these heinous acts, and we finally achieve a settlement with him where the family was so reasonable and so generous, but still holding him accountable. And I don't see any intent he ever had to do anything other than to commit a fraud on the court, a fraud against this grieving family, and continuing to just rub salt in the wounds of their grief. Because with this thing going on and on and on, they cannot let Brittany rest.
All right. I want to thank you very much for being on the program.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here, and thank you.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at InsiderExclusive.com.